Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for joining us today as we look at Jobs Act 4 years later and examine the benefits it has brought to small companies and their ability to raise capital and grow their business. As President Obama even said himself, this bill has been a game changer for startups and for small businesses. We've seen this especially in my home district, where recent reports have said that St. Louis has the fastest growing startup scene in the country. This is exciting news, but as many of you have stated today, there is still more work that we can do to build on the success of the Jobs Act and in helping small businesses reach their full potential. So in that vein, Mr. Griggs, you mentioned that, and it has been mentioned before, that in the 4 years since the Jobs Act, that there have been 865 IPOs, with 86% being emerging growth companies. Can you talk a little bit in some specifics here about the most important steps that should be taken to build on that success?
Sure. I think our viewpoint on the most important aspects would be to start considering what it means once you are public and focus on some aspects that we find continually come up with companies about what the challenges are once you do go public, because there's certainly the brand of going public has over the years taken some hits based on what the burdens are, quote unquote burdens, to be a public company. So I did highlight in my testimony, I think what we feel will be the most important ones would be to provide much more transparency on the proxy firms and what they're requiring companies to do. Companies looking at are continually frustrated by the PCAOB and how they make quote-unquote recommendations to audit firms that they're not really sure how to interpret. And so we do feel that much more clarity needs to be done in that aspect. And then you look at how a company helps or goes about understanding who their investors are. There are rules in place that are requirements to report long positions, but nothing on the short side. And as that has become much more prevalent in terms of how investors use shorts, companies continually ask us to advocate for that. So those three aspects to us would do a lot to help instill more confidence in the public market and going public.
Thank you very much. And my colleague, Mr. Hurt, kind of touched on things. We were all looking at the slowdown at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, in the IPO period. Now, you talked about market conditions being really the driving force there, that there was still demand. And you've touched on it a little bit, but can you talk about some of the regulatory impediments that are perhaps chilling the IPO market?
Yeah, I really would go back to we see a very robust pipeline of companies that would like to go, and typically sometimes you can point to various sectors that have certain regulatory challenges. That's not the case today. So our view is it is much more a market condition than a regulatory condition, because it is across all sectors right now where there just have not been IPOs. But we've seen this in the past, and we do feel very strongly that the second half of 2016 is going to be strong.
Good, let's hope so. I'd like now to turn to the market for private financing for those companies that haven't gone public yet, which is a very important source of funding for startups and early stage businesses. In following up again, my colleague, Mr. McHenry, Mr. Keating, you stated that angel investors' investment is sluggish, and you pointed to regulation and the over-regulatory burden. Can you expand on some of the specifics of that? You mentioned it in a broad, overreaching sense, but what are those impediments, those regulatory impediments that exist regarding this kind of investment? Well,
actually, it is the best way to answer it is a broad, overarching issue. I think it's a broad, overarching issue for the entire economy. When Mr. Griggs talks about the IPO market, when we're talking about angel investment, when we're talking about the decline in business loans to small businesses, that's all. There are a whole host of issues in here, but overarching is the state of this economy. You know, a recovery that's growing at 2.1% when we should be growing, if you base it on history, at almost 4.5%. So it all goes back, but then the question becomes, why is that? And I'll go back to, it's pointing policy in the wrong direction in every possible area you can think of in the last several years, especially on regulation. We've been in a hyper-regulatory market on a whole host of fronts, but taxes as well. No leadership on trade. I'll even pick on the Federal Reserve while I'm here, in the sense that they've been saying that they're saving the economy, but in terms of the monetary policy that's been run, it's without precedent. And I've never heard so many small business owners say, what's going to happen with what the Fed's been doing? And they never talked to me about the Fed ever before because it's uncertainty now. Nobody knows how this is all going to come out. So I would say it is an overarching environment, and then you can go down and drill down into all sorts of individual regulations
Thank
and
you, Mr.
taxes.
Keating. I've run out of time here, and I would say that that fourth branch of government, that over-regulatory nature that we have that's been created here, which are the regulators, the agencies, the departments, is not just here in financial services, is overarching in many different areas across our jurisdiction. So I thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady.